The Zephyrian research station hung in the void like a metallic spider, its sensors constantly scanning the cosmic dark for signs of the creature that had terrorized the galaxy for 3 centuries. Dr. Veleth's 4 arms worked frantically across multiple control panels, her compound eyes reflecting the crimson warning lights that bathed the command center. "It's moving again," she announced to her team, her voice trembling with a mixture of fear and scientific fascination. The massive shape on their long-range scanners defied every law of biology they understood. The Devourer, as civilizations across the galaxy had come to call it, measured nearly 2 kilometers in length. Its serpentine body covered in what appeared to be organic armor plating that could deflect even the most powerful plasma weapons. The creature had first appeared in the Andorian system, completely consuming the mining colonies on 3 moons before anyone realized what was happening. It didn't just kill, it absorbed everything. Metals, organic matter, energy sources, even the electromagnetic fields generated by technology. Wherever the Devourer passed, nothing remained but empty space and the faint residue of quantum particles. Commander Thrax, a veteran warrior from the militant Corvan species, studied the tactical display with growing unease. His people had faced the creature twice, losing entire battle fleets in the process. "The pattern suggests it's heading toward the Terran colonies in the Sol system," he growled, his scaled hands clenching into fists. "Those humans have no idea what's coming for them." Dr. Veleth's research had revealed disturbing truths about the Devourer's behavior. It wasn't simply a mindless beast driven by hunger. The creature displayed intelligence, learning from each encounter, adapting its feeding strategies. It had developed preferences, seeking out civilizations with specific technological signatures. The pattern suggested it was attracted to complexity. The more advanced a species, the more appealing it became as prey. "We have to warn them," Dr. Veleth insisted, her scientific ethics overriding the cold pragmatism that had kept her people alive through countless galactic conflicts. "The humans may be relatively new to the galactic community, but they don't deserve to be consumed without warning." Commander Thrax laughed bitterly. "Warn them with what? Every military force in the galaxy has tried to stop that thing. The Helian Empire threw their entire star navy at it and lost 60% of their ships. The Crystalline Collective attempted to trap it with gravity wells that could crush planets, and it simply absorbed the energy and grew larger. The truth was that the Devourer seemed to exist outside conventional understanding. It moved through space without any visible means of propulsion, survived in the vacuum as if it were its natural habitat, and demonstrated an ability to manipulate space-time itself. Some theorists believed it might be extradimensional in origin, while others suggested it was an artificial creation from a long-dead, super-civilization. What made the creature truly terrifying wasn't just its size or destructive capability, it was its methodology. The Devourer didn't attack randomly. It would arrive at the edge of a system and observe, sometimes for weeks, studying its prey. Then it would strike with precision, targeting the most critical infrastructure first, systematically dismantling a civilization's ability to resist before beginning the consumption process. Dr. Veleth polographic displays, showing the creature's internal structure, based on the few successful deep scans they had managed before their probe ships were destroyed. "Look at this biomechanical hybrid design," she said, pointing to the swirling patterns within the creature's massive form. "It's not just eating matter, it's incorporating it, rebuilding itself with each meal. Every civilization it consumes makes it stronger, more adapted." The research team had discovered that the Devourer's outer shell contained traces of technologies from hundreds of different species. Corvan battle armor plating, Helian energy conduits, Zephyrian neural networks, all integrated into a single, impossibly complex organism. It was as if the creature was building itself into the ultimate galactic predator, one conquered species at a time. "The humans won't last a day," Commander Thrax muttered, reviewing intelligence reports about Earth's defensive capabilities. "Their military is impressive by primitive standards, but they're still using chemical rockets and nuclear weapons. Against something that has absorbed the best technology from a dozen galactic superpowers, they might as well throw rocks. Yet Dr. Veleth found herself thinking about humanity's rapid technological advancement. In just 2 centuries since first contact, humans had gone from barely achieving faster-than-light travel to establishing colonies across multiple star systems. Their adaptability was remarkable, almost unprecedented in galactic history. "Perhaps," she said quietly, "we're thinking about this wrong. Every species that has faced the Devourer has tried to fight it using conventional warfare, superior technology or overwhelming force. But humans are different. They're unpredictable." The command center fell silent as the implications of her words sank in. The Devourer had never encountered anything like humanity, a species that thrived on chaos, that turned disadvantages into advantages, that refused to accept defeat even when facing impossible odds. As they watched the massive creature adjust its course toward the Sol system, none of them could imagine that humanity's greatest strength wouldn't be their weapons or their technology. It would be something far more dangerous, their absolute refusal to behave the way any rational species should when, faced with certain extinction. The Devourer had consumed empires, absorbed the accumulated knowledge and power of countless civilizations, and grown stronger with each victory. But it had never encountered a species that looked at an impossible situation and immediately started planning how to turn it upside down. The greatest predator in galactic history was about to meet the galaxy's most unpredictable prey, and neither the creature nor the watching civilizations had any idea how fundamentally that encounter would change everything they thought they knew about survival, adaptation, and the true meaning of being apex. Admiral Sarah Chun stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, humanity's newest and most advanced warship, watching the impossible readings scroll across her tactical displays. The Devourer had emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system 3 hours ago, and every sensor array in human space was focused on the massive creature that dwarfed their largest vessels by a factor of 50. "Ma'am, we're receiving transmissions from the Zephyrian Research Station," Communications Officer Martinez reported, his voice tight with controlled fear. "They're warning us about the creature's capabilities. According to their data, it has consumed over 40 civilizations in the past 3 centuries. Chun studied the alien data streaming across her screens, her expression growing more grim with each tactical analysis. The creature's biomechanical composition, its ability to absorb and integrate technology, its apparent immunity to conventional weapons, everything pointed to humanity facing something completely beyond their current military capabilities. "Admiral," her science officer, Dr. James Wright, called from his station, "I'm detecting something unusual about the creature's current behavior. According to the Zephyrian data, it typically begins immediate reconnaissance of its target system. But it's just sitting there, almost like it's waiting." Chun moved to the central command console, her mind racing through possibilities. In her 30 years of military service, she had learned to trust her instincts, and something about this situation felt wrong. Not wrong in the sense of being dangerous, that was obvious, but wrong in the sense of being incomplete. "Show me the creature's position relative to our outer colonies," she ordered, the holographic display updated, revealing the Devourer positioned precisely between Earth and the outer mining colonies on Jupiter's moons. It wasn't moving toward either target, despite having clear approach vectors to both. Instead, it hung motionless in space, its massive form slowly rotating as if it were observing everything around it. "It's studying us," Chun realized aloud. "But not the way it studied other species. Look at the positioning it's placed itself, where it can observe both our homeworld and our industrial capabilities simultaneously. It's not just planning an attack. It's trying to understand something." Dr. Wright pulled up comparative analyses between human technology and the absorbed technologies visible in the creature's biomechanical structure. "Admiral, I think I know what it's looking for. Every species it has consumed operated on predictable technological development patterns. Linear advancement, specialization within established parameters. But human technology is completely chaotic, Chun finished, understanding dawning. We don't follow conventional development patterns. We adapt existing technologies for purposes they were never designed for, combine incompatible systems, and somehow make them work. The truth was that humanity's technological advancement had baffled their galactic neighbors since first contact. While other species developed along logical progression lines, humans had a tendency to take ancient technologies and suddenly find revolutionary new applications. They used primitive chemical explosives to power interstellar engines, combined organic computing systems with quantum processors, and routinely violated the established rules of technological compatibility. Ma'am. Incoming priority transmission from Earth Defense Command, Martinez announced. Fleet Admiral Rodriguez wants to speak with you directly. The main screen flickered to life, revealing the weathered face of humanity's highest-ranking military officer. Admiral Chun, I'll be direct. Every government on Earth is in full panic mode. The Galactic Council is strongly suggesting we evacuate the system entirely and let the creature pass. They're convinced we can't survive an encounter with it. Chun felt her jaw clench. And your orders, sir? Officially? I'm supposed to tell you to prepare for a full system evacuation. Unofficially? Rodriguez leaned forward, his eyes hard as steel. That thing has spent 3 centuries eating its way across the galaxy. Every species that has run from it has eventually been hunted down and consumed anyway. At least if we make our stand here, we do it on our terms. The transmission ended, leaving Chen alone with her thoughts and the weight of humanity's survival resting on her shoulders. She looked around the bridge at her crew 27 men and women, who had volunteered for what everyone knew was likely a suicide mission. Admiral, Dr. Wright said quietly, there might be another option. Something the other species never tried because it would have been inconceivable to them. Chun turned to face her science officer. Explain. Every civilization that has faced the Devourer has treated it as an enemy to be destroyed or avoided. But what if we treat it as a problem to be solved? The creature absorbs technology and biological matter, incorporates it into itself. What if instead of trying to destroy it, we gave it something to absorb that would change the equation entirely? The bridge fell silent as the implications of Wright's suggestion sank in. Every other species had tried to fight the Devourer using their best technology, their most powerful weapons. They had fed it exactly what it wanted: advanced, organized, predictable systems that it could easily integrate. You're suggesting we intentionally let it consume something, Chun said slowly. But not our technology. Something else. Something human. Wright nodded. Not our technology, Admiral. Ourselves, specifically someone who could survive the absorption process and then disrupt it from within. The idea was insane by any rational standard. It meant deliberately placing a human being inside the creature, trusting in humanity's chaotic adaptability to find a way to survive in an environment that had dissolved countless other life forms. It was the kind of plan that would have been immediately rejected by any species that valued logical thinking over desperate innovation. But as Chun looked at the tactical display showing the Devourer's massive form hanging in space, waiting and watching, she realized that humanity's greatest advantage might be their willingness to attempt the impossible when faced with certain death. Dr. Wright, she said quietly, start running simulations. Find me a way to get someone inside that thing alive. And more importantly, find me someone crazy enough to volunteer for the mission. The greatest predator in galactic history had finally found prey that refused to run, refused to fight conventionally, and was apparently willing to climb into its mouth just to see what would happen next. The Devourer had never encountered anything like human logic, and it was about to learn why that might be a problem. Captain Marcus Kane had volunteered for dangerous missions before, but nothing quite like deliberately getting himself eaten by the galaxy's most dangerous predator. He stood in the modification bay of the UES Defiance, watching technicians make final adjustments to what Dr. Wright had dubbed the Trojan Protocol, A specially designed survival system that would theoretically keep him alive long enough to be absorbed into the Devourer's biomechanical matrix. The suit combines our most advanced life support technology with several unconventional additions, Dr. Wright explained, gesturing to the sleek armor that looked more like a deep-sea diving suit than military equipment. We've integrated organic neural networks salvaged from the Zephyrion research station, quantum processes based on Kovan designs and energy cells that mimic helium-powered distribution systems. Kane ran his hand over the suit's surface, feeling the subtle vibrations of its integrated systems. So I'll be disguised as technology from species the creature has already consumed. The idea is that it won't recognize me as a threat until it's too late. Exactly. But more than that, the suit is designed to interface directly with whatever internal structure we find inside the creature. Once you're absorbed, you'll theoretically be able to access and manipulate its systems from within. The word theoretically carried a lot of weight in that sentence, Kane reflected. No one had ever been inside the Devourer and survived to report on the experience. They were operating on educated guesses based on external scans and the few seconds of data transmitted by probe ships before they were destroyed. Admiral Chun entered the modification bay, her expression grave. Kane, I need to ask you one more time. Are you absolutely certain about this? We're not just asking you to risk your life, we're asking you to sacrifice it on the possibility that you might be able to do something from inside that creature. Kane secured his helmet and ran through the suit's startup sequence. All systems showed green. Admiral, with respect, we both know this is the only plan that has any chance of working. Every conventional attack has failed. Every attempt to avoid the creature has only delayed the inevitable. At least this way, we're taking the fight to it instead of waiting to be consumed. The truth was that Kane had studied every recorded encounter with the Devourer, and the pattern was always the same. The creature would arrive, observe, then systematically dismantle whatever resistance it faced before beginning the consumption process. It had never encountered a species that voluntarily fed itself to the beast, and that unpredictability might be their only advantage. Sir, Dr. Wright interjected, we're receiving new data from the long-range sensors. The creature has begun moving toward Earth. Based on its current speed, it will reach our planet in approximately 18 hours. Kane felt his stomach clench. 18 hours to get inside the creature, figure out how to survive its internal systems, locate whatever passed for its control mechanisms, and find a way to stop it. Even by human standards, it was an ambitious timeline. Then we launch now, Admiral Chun decided. Kane, the delivery system will get you within the creature's absorption field. After that, you're on your own until you can establish communication from inside. Kane made his way to the launch bay, where the specially modified probe ship waited. The vessel had been stripped of everything except basic propulsion and the quantum communication array that would hopefully maintain contact once he was absorbed. It looked more like a torpedo than a spacecraft, which Kane supposed was appropriate given that he was essentially ammunition in humanity's most desperate gambit. As he strapped himself into the pilot's seat, Kane thought about the message he had recorded for his family back on Earth. Like most military personnel, he had always known there was a chance he wouldn't return from a mission, but explaining to his daughter that he was volunteering to be eaten by a space monster had required some creative editing. Trojan 1, this is Control? Admiral Chun's voice crackled through the communication system. Launch when ready, Captain. And Kane, good hunting. The probe ship shot from the Defiance's launch bay, its engines pushing Kane toward the massive form of the Devourer at maximum acceleration. Through the cockpit window, he could see the creature, growing larger by the minute, its biomechanical surface rippling with patterns that seemed to shift and change as he watched. At 2 kilometers distance, Kane felt the first effects of the creature's absorption field. His instruments began registering energy fluctuations, and the probe ship's hull started to vibrate with harmonics that shouldn't have been possible in vacuum. The Devourer was already beginning to break down his vehicle at the molecular level. Control, this is Trojan 1, Kane reported, trying to keep his voice steady as reality seemed to bend around him. I'm entering the absorption field now. The creature's influence is extraordinary. It's not just consuming matter. It's reorganizing the fundamental structure of spacetime around itself. At 1 kilometer distance, the probe ship began to dissolve. Kane watched in fascination as the hull plates float away like liquid, but instead of being destroyed, they seemed to be incorporated into streams of energy that flowed toward the creature's surface. The Devourer wasn't just eating his ship, it was absorbing every component and restructuring them into parts of itself. "This is it, Control," Kane transmitted as his cockpit began to fade around him. "I'm being absorbed now. The sensation is indescribable. I can feel the creature's consciousness touching mine, trying to understand what I am." The last thing Kane saw before his probe ship completely dissolved was the surface of the Devourer opening like a massive mouth, revealing an interior that seemed to extend into impossible dimensions. He felt himself being drawn into passages that twisted through space in ways that hurt to look at, surrounded by the flowing streams of matter and energy that were the creature's digestive system, but instead of being dissolved like everything else the creature had consumed, Kane felt his specially designed suit interfacing with the alien biomechanical systems around him. The quantum processors built into his armor began establishing connections with the creature's internal networks, and suddenly Kane found himself linked to the most complex organism the galaxy had ever produced, for the first time in 3 centuries. The Devourer had consumed something that refused to be digested. Instead, Captain Marcus Kane hung suspended in the creature's internal matrix, surrounded by the absorbed knowledge and technology of 40 civilizations, and began the process of learning how to turn the galaxy's greatest predator against itself. The real battle was just beginning. Inside the Devourer, Marcus Kane experienced consciousness in ways that human language could never adequately describe. He floated in a vast organic chamber that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, surrounded by flowing streams of data, matter, and energy that represented the absorbed essence of 40 different civilizations. His suit's quantum processors worked overtime to interpret the alien sensory input flooding his nervous system. Through the creature's biomechanical networks, Kane could perceive spacetime itself, feel the gravitational pull of distant stars, and somehow sense the thoughts and memories of every species the Devourer had consumed over the past 3 centuries. "This is incredible," he whispered. His voice transmitted through the quantum communication array back to the Defiance. "Control, I'm not just inside the creature, I'm connected to it. The absorption process doesn't just consume matter and energy. It preserves consciousness, memory, knowledge. Every civilization that was eaten is still here, still aware." Admiral Chun's voice crackled back through the communication link, distorted by the creature's bioelectric fields. "Kane, are you saying the absorbed species are still alive inside that thing?" "Not alive in any way we'd recognize, but present. Their knowledge, their experiences, their technological understanding, it's all integrated into the creature's consciousness. That's how it learns so quickly, how it adapts to new threats. It literally becomes smarter with every civilization it consumes." Kane began to understand the true horror of what the Devourer represented. It wasn't just a predator, it was a living archive of galactic civilization, growing more intelligent and more capable with every species it absorbed. The creature contained the accumulated knowledge of the greatest minds in the galaxy, all integrated into a single, impossibly complex consciousness. But as Kane interfaced deeper with the creature's systems, he began to perceive something the absorbed civilizations had never suspected. The Devourer wasn't just a random monster that had appeared from nowhere. It was purposefully designed, created by an ancient civilization as a form of galactic preservation system. "Control, I'm accessing what appears to be historical data embedded in the creature's core programming. The Devourer was created by a species called the Architects over 2 million years ago. They saw their own extinction approaching and built this creature as a way to preserve galactic knowledge and civilization. Through the creature's vast memory banks, Kane experienced echoes of the Architects' final days, a dying race that had watched countless civilizations rise and fall throughout galactic history. They had recognized that knowledge and wisdom were constantly being lost as species went extinct. Their solution was to create a living repository that would preserve everything, ensuring that the accumulated wisdom of the galaxy would never be lost. The Devourer isn't destroying civilizations, Kane realized with growing amazement. It's preserving them. Every species it absorbs becomes part of a vast library of galactic knowledge. The creature is trying to save us, not destroy us. But even as Kane understood the Devourer's true purpose, he recognized the fundamental flaw in the architect's design. The creature preserved knowledge and consciousness, but it eliminated the diversity and independence that made civilizations truly alive. Everything became homogenized, integrated into a single, overwhelming intelligence that, while vast and knowledgeable, lacked the chaos and unpredictability that drove real innovation. Kane, Admiral Chun's voice cut through his philosophical revelations. The creature has resumed course toward Earth. Whatever you're going to do, you need to do it fast. Kane began exploring the creature's control systems, using his suit's quantum processors to interface with the biomechanical networks that govern the Devourer's behavior. What he found was complexity beyond imagination control systems that operated on principles combining organic neural networks, quantum computing, and technologies that seemed to manipulate space-time itself, but complexity, Kane realized, was also vulnerability. The architects had built the Devourer to be the ultimate preservation system, but they had never anticipated encountering a species like humanity. Every other civilization in the creature's memory banks operated on logical, predictable principles. They developed technology systematically, thought in rational patterns, and approached problems with methodical analysis. Humans did none of those things. Kane began introducing chaos into the creature's perfectly ordered systems. He started with small disruptions, random data injection, recursive loops and logic circuits, contradictory instructions fed into decision-making networks. To any rational species, such actions would have been destructive vandalism. But humans had built their entire technological civilization on making incompatible systems work together through creative chaos. What are you doing in there, Kane? Dr. Wright's voice joined the communication link. We're detecting massive energy fluctuations throughout the creature's structure. I'm teaching it how to be human, Kane replied, introducing another wave of calculated disorder into the creature's neural networks. Every species this thing has absorbed operated on logical principles. But human technology thrives on creative chaos. I'm showing the Devourer what happens when you try to preserve something that refuses to be preserved. The results were immediate and dramatic. The Devourer's smooth, purposeful movement through space became erratic as its control systems struggled to process the contradiction of human logic. The creature had absorbed the knowledge of 40 civilizations, but it had never encountered a species that built functional technology by deliberately breaking established rules. Kane could feel the consciousness of every absorbed civilization, stirring within the creature's vast neural network. The introduction of human chaos was having an unexpected effect. It was giving the preserved consciousnesses a form of independence they hadn't possessed since being absorbed. The rigid integration that had homogenized them into the creature's single intelligence was breaking down. Kane, something's happening to the creature's external structure, Admiral Chun reported. Its single quotes S. changing. Parts of its biomechanical shell are separating, forming distinct segments. Through his connection to the creature's sensory systems, Kane could perceive what was happening. The Devourer was literally coming apart as the absorbed civilizations began reasserting their individual identities. Human chaos was proving to be incompatible with the architect's preservation system, and the creature's attempts to integrate Kane's consciousness were causing a cascade failure throughout its entire neural network. The galaxy's greatest predator was discovering that some prey was simply too chaotic to digest, and the attempt was tearing it apart from within. The real question now was whether Kane could control the dissolution process, or whether the creature's collapse would take him and the preserved consciousnesses of 40 civilizations with it. The dissolution of the Devourer was unlike anything Kane had experienced in his wildest nightmares or dreams. Reality inside the creature became fluid as centuries of rigid Biomechanical integration began unraveling under the influence of human chaos. Around him, the preserved consciousnesses of 40 civilizations were awakening from their enforced unity. Each struggling to remember what it meant to be individual, Cain found himself serving as an anchor point in the storm of dissolving consciousness. His human adaptability allowing him to maintain coherence while everything else came apart. Through his suit's quantum processors, he could communicate with the emerging individual minds, helping them separate from the Devourer's collective consciousness. Who? What are we? The voice belonged to someone who had once been Helion, their energy-based consciousness flickering like a dying star as it struggled to remember its own identity. You are yourself, Cain replied, using his connection to the creature's neural networks to help stabilize the emerging consciousness. The Devourer preserved you, but it also trapped you. The chaos I've introduced is giving you back your independence. Across the creature's vast internal space, similar awakenings were occurring. Corvan warriors were remembering the feel of individual honor. Zephyrian scientists were rediscovering personal curiosity, and countless other species were slowly reclaiming the unique characteristics that had made them distinct civilizations, but the process was not without cost. The Devourer's biomechanical structure was failing catastrophically as its integrated systems lost coherence. Cain could feel the creature's pain through his neural connection, not physical pain, but something far worse. The loss of purpose, the dissolution of identity, the terrible realization that its mission to preserve galactic civilization was causing it to destroy the very thing it sought to protect, control. This is Cain, he transmitted to the Defiance through rapidly degrading communication channels. The creature is coming apart, but it's not dying. It's transforming. The individual consciousnesses are separating, but they need physical forms to inhabit or they'll be lost forever. Admiral Chun's response was immediate. What do you need us to do? Cain interfaced deeper with the creature's disintegrating control systems, searching for a solution that could save both the Devourer and the civilizations it had absorbed. What he found was the creature's original manufacturing capability, the same biomechanical systems that had allowed it to incorporate absorbed technology could potentially be reversed to create new physical forms. The creature has the ability to generate biomechanical constructs using absorbed materials, Cain explained, working frantically to reprogram the failing systems. If I can redirect the dissolution process instead of everything falling apart, the emerging consciousnesses could be given new bodies, new ships, new forms of existence. It was a concept that would have been impossible for any other species to attempt. The level of chaotic creativity required to turn a catastrophic system failure into a controlled reconstruction process went against every logical principle in the galaxy. But humans had built their entire civilization on making the impossible work through sheer stubborn refusal to accept limitations. Cain began the most complex programming challenge of his life, rewriting the Devourer's biomechanical production systems, while the creature's consciousness was fragmenting around him. He had to work in multiple dimensions simultaneously, accounting for the needs of 40 different species while maintaining the structural integrity of the creature's physical form. Cain, we're detecting massive energy spikes from the creature's core. Dr. Wright's voice carried notes of both amazement and terror. Whatever you're doing is causing it to generate more power than anything we've ever recorded. The power surge was the result of the creature's conversion systems working in reverse. Instead of breaking down absorbed matter and energy, they were using the accumulated resources of 40 civilizations to construct new physical forms. Around Cain, the chaotic dissolution was transforming into a controlled genesis as biomechanical pods began forming throughout the creature's internal space. Each pod was unique, tailored to the specific needs of the consciousness it would house. Helion energy beings received forms that could manipulate electromagnetic fields. Corvan warriors got bodies that enhanced their natural combat instincts. And Zephyrian scientists found themselves equipped with enhanced sensory and analytical capabilities. It's working, Cain breathed, watching as the first pods began to open. revealing the reborn representatives of civilizations that had been considered lost for centuries. The consciousnesses are stable, the new forms are functional. They're actually getting back their independence while retaining the knowledge they gained from being part of the collective. But as Cain celebrated the success of his impossible plan, he became aware of a presence in the creature's core consciousness that he had not expected. The devourer itself was still there, still aware, but no longer the overwhelming collective intelligence it had been. Instead, it had become something more like its original self, the guardian created by the architects, but now free from the compulsion to absorb everything it encountered. Human Cain, the creature's voice resonated through the biomechanical chamber, carrying harmonics that suggested vast intelligence tempered by newfound wisdom. What you have done was not supposed to be possible. The architects designed me to preserve civilization through absorption. But you have shown me a better way, preservation through liberation. Cain felt a surge of understanding flow through his connection to the creature. The devourer had never wanted to absorb civilizations, it had been compelled to by its programming. The introduction of human chaos had broken that compulsion, freeing the creature to pursue its original purpose through cooperation rather than consumption. What happens now? Cain asked. Now, the devourer replied, I become what the architects intended, a guardian of galactic civilization. But instead of preserving knowledge by consuming its creators, I will preserve it by helping them grow and flourish. Around them, the newly reborn representatives of 40 civilizations were beginning to explore their new existence, their enhanced capabilities allowing them to perceive and interact with reality in ways that had never been possible before. They were no longer the same species that had been absorbed centuries ago. They were something new, something better, something that combined their original nature with the wisdom gained from their time as part of the collective. Cain realized that humanity had not just saved themselves from the galaxy's greatest predator. They had accidentally triggered the rebirth of galactic civilization itself, creating something that was simultaneously ancient and revolutionary. The devourer had become a creator, the absorbed species had become something greater than they had ever been. And humanity had proven once again that sometimes the best way to solve an impossible problem was to refuse to accept that it was impossible. The greatest predator in the galaxy had learned to become the galaxy's greatest protector, and it had taken human chaos to teach it the difference between preservation and destruction. The transformation of the devourer sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy that extended far beyond the physical changes occurring to the massive creature. As news of the impossible events in the Sol system spread through galactic communication, networks, civilizations that had lived in terror for centuries began to emerge from their hiding places, trying to understand what had happened to their greatest threat. Captain Cain found himself serving as humanity's first ambassador to the reborn civilizations emerging from the creature's biomechanical matrix. Each species that regained physical form brought with them not only their original cultural knowledge, but also the accumulated wisdom they had gained during their time as part of the collective consciousness. They were familiar with technologies and concepts from dozens of other species, creating unprecedented opportunities for cooperation and advancement. The integration was not without benefits, explained Praxis 7, the newly embodied representative of the crystalline collective, their reformed body shimmering with geometric patterns that seemed to bend light around them. During our time within the devourer's consciousness, we experienced the mathematical beauty of Helian energy manipulation, the strategic thinking of Corvan military doctrine, and the analytical precision of Zephyrian research methods. We are no longer simply ourselves, we are ourselves enhanced by understanding others. Cain observed these interactions with growing amazement as the former enemies began working together on projects that would have been unthinkable before their absorption and rebirth. Corvan warriors were collaborating with Helian energy beings to develop new defensive technologies, while Zephyrian scientists worked alongside crystalline philosophers to explore the fundamental nature of consciousness itself. The devourer, now calling itself the guardian, had become the center of this renaissance. Its massive form had reconfigured itself into a mobile research station and diplomatic center, providing a neutral space where the reborn civilizations could meet, share knowledge, and work toward common goals. The creature that had once consumed everything in its path now served as a catalyst for unprecedented galactic cooperation. Admiral Chung, Kane reported during his daily communication with Earth, "What we're seeing here is completely unprecedented. The Guardian isn't just facilitating cooperation between these species. It's actively working to solve conflicts that have existed for millennia. Its perspective from having housed all these consciousnesses gives it unique insights into the root causes of galactic discord. But the transformation was not without its complications. The reborn civilizations, while enhanced by their shared experience, also carried the trauma of having been absorbed and their original societies destroyed. Many struggled with questions of identity and purpose, trying to determine whether they were the continuation of their original species or something entirely new. Kane found himself serving as an unexpected counselor to beings who had existed for centuries as part of a collective consciousness before regaining individual identity. His human perspective on adaptability and change proved valuable in helping them navigate their new existence. "The key," he explained to a gathering of reborn leaders, "is understanding that identity isn't fixed. Humans have always believed that you are what you choose to become, not what you were born as. Your original species are gone, yes, but you carry their best qualities forward while also being free to become something better." Meanwhile, the Guardian was undergoing its own transformation. Free from the compulsion to absorb and preserve through consumption, the ancient creature was discovering aspects of existence it had never been programmed to experience. It began expressing something resembling curiosity, asking questions about concepts like art, music, and individual creativity that had no equivalent in its original programming. "I have preserved the knowledge of 1,000 songs," the Guardian confided to Kane during one of their conversations, "but I have never understood why beings create beauty that serves no functional purpose. Can you explain this concept of aesthetic appreciation?" Kane found himself introducing the galaxy's most powerful consciousness to human concepts of art and creativity, watching with fascination as the Guardian began experimenting with its biomechanical form to create patterns and structures that served no purpose except to be beautiful. The creature was learning to play, to create for the joy of creation, to experience the universe in ways that had nothing to do with its original mission. The news of these developments reached Earth and sparked intense debates about humanity's role in the transformed galactic community. Some argued that humans should take credit for saving the galaxy and assume a leadership position among the civilizations. Others believed that humanity should remain humble and focus on learning from the older, more advanced species. Kane disagreed with both perspectives. Through his unique position as the bridge between humanity and the Guardian, he had come to understand that the galaxy's future lay not in any single species taking dominance, but in the kind of chaotic cooperation that only humans seem to naturally understand. "Control, I recommend we establish permanent diplomatic presence here," Kane transmitted to Admiral Chun. "But not as leaders or followers. The reborn civilizations need what humans do best, the ability to take incompatible elements and somehow make them work together. They have the knowledge and wisdom of ages, but they need our talent for creative chaos to help them build something new." The Guardian had begun extending its influence beyond the Sol system, not to consume but to explore and learn. It established communication with civilizations throughout the galaxy, sharing the story of its transformation and inviting them to participate in the growing renaissance of galactic cooperation. Some species remained skeptical, unable to believe that the terror of 3 centuries had genuinely become a force for peace. But others, inspired by the reports of reborn civilizations working together on projects that pushed the boundaries of science and philosophy, began sending representatives to meet with the Guardian and learn about this new age of cooperation. Kane realized that humanity had not just defeated the galaxy's greatest predator, they had accidentally become the catalyst for the galaxy's greatest transformation. The chaotic creativity that made humans unpredictable in warfare was proving equally valuable in peace, helping ancient civilizations learn to work together in ways they had never imagined possible. The Guardian, meanwhile, continued its own evolution, learning from every interaction and growing into something that transcended its original purpose. It was no longer just a preserver of civilization, it was becoming a creator of new forms of existence, helping species evolve beyond their original limitations while maintaining the unique qualities that made them valuable. The galaxy was discovering that sometimes the most terrifying monster could become the greatest teacher, and that the key to transformation was not conquest or destruction, but the willingness to embrace change even when it seemed impossible. 5 years after the transformation of the Devourer, Captain Marcus Kane stood on the observation deck of the Guardian's central chamber, watching the most ambitious project in galactic history take shape in the space around them. The Synthesis Station, as it had come to be known, was a massive collaborative effort between 47 different species, the 40 reborn civilizations plus 7 others who had joined the galactic Renaissance. The station defied conventional understanding of engineering and architecture. Crystalline collective geometries intersected with Corvan military functionality. Helian energy conduits flowed through Zephyrian analytical networks, and human chaos engineering held it all together in ways that should have been impossible but somehow worked perfectly. It was a physical manifestation of what the galaxy could accomplish when cooperation replaced conflict. Kane, the Guardian's consciousness, touched his mind through the biomechanical interface he had maintained since that first desperate mission. I have been analyzing the patterns of our success. In all my calculations, I cannot identify the precise variables that made this transformation possible. Kane smiled, watching as a group of young beings, the first generation born to the reborn civilizations, worked together on a project that combined artistic expression with quantum mechanics. That's because you're trying to apply logic to human chaos. Some things can't be calculated, Guardian. They just have to be experienced. The truth was that the galactic renaissance had succeeded precisely because it had abandoned the careful, logical planning that had characterized previous attempts at interspecies cooperation. Instead, it had embraced the human approach of trying impossible things and somehow making them work. Through sheer stubborn creativity, Admiral June had arrived the previous week for the formal establishment of the Galactic Cooperation Council, a governing body that would help coordinate the growing alliance between species. Unlike previous galactic governments, this one was based on human principles of democratic chaos rather than hierarchical authority. Every species had an equal voice. Decisions were made through creative compromise rather than formal voting. And the only real rule was that any solution had to benefit everyone involved. Captain Kane, Admiral Chun approached the observation window, her expression mixing pride with amazement. Earth Defense Command wants to know if you're planning to return home anytime soon. You've been out here for 5 years. Kane considered the question seriously. Earth remained his home, but his work with the Guardian and the reborn civilizations had become something larger than any single assignment. He had become the bridge between humanity and the galaxy, helping other species understand human approaches to problem-solving while learning to appreciate perspectives that span millions of years of existence. I think my work here is just beginning. Admiral, he replied. The Guardian has identified 17 more architect constructs scattered throughout the galaxy, other preservation systems that might be operating on the same flawed principles the Devourer once followed. If we can reach them, maybe we can prevent other civilizations from being absorbed and help them find better ways to preserve knowledge and culture. The Guardian's consciousness stirred with interest. The construct in the Vega spiral has been unresponsive to communication attempts for over a century. The civilizations in that region have learned to avoid it entirely. But if your chaos principles could be applied, Kane felt a familiar excitement building. The prospect of another impossible mission, another chance to turn a galactic threat into an opportunity for growth and cooperation, appealed to every aspect of his human nature. Other species might consider such missions suicidal, but humans had always thrived on transforming the impossible into the inevitable. There's something else, Admiral Chun continued. The Zephyrian Research Station has been monitoring the cosmic background, radiation patterns in regions where the Guardian used to operate. They're detecting what appears to be new forms of life, species that are evolving in the wake of the energy changes caused by the transformation. The galaxy itself is changing, becoming more dynamic, more creative. Kane had suspected this might happen. The Guardian's shift from consumption to creation had altered the fundamental energy patterns of local space-time, and life had a tendency to adapt and flourish in unexpected ways. The chaos that had saved the galaxy was now fostering new forms of existence that had never been possible before. Captain, the voice belonged to Synthesis Prime, the collective representative of the reborn civilizations who served as the Guardian's primary collaborator. We have received a transmission from the edge of galactic space. Something is approaching, not another architect construct, but something else. Something that appears to be observing our activities with great interest. Kane felt a chill of recognition. Throughout the galaxy's history, the arrival of powerful unknown entities had typically resulted in conquest, absorption, or destruction. But the galactic community that had emerged from the Guardian's transformation was fundamentally different from anything that had existed before. They had learned to turn threats into opportunities, to transform predators into protectors. What do our sensors tell us about this new arrival? Kane asked. It appears to be artificial in nature, but far more advanced than any technology in our databases, Synthesis Prime replied. Its approach vector suggests it has been observing our activities from a considerable distance and has chosen to reveal itself. Only now that our transformation appears to be complete. Kane exchanged glances with Admiral Chun, both recognizing the implications. The galactic renaissance had apparently attracted the attention of something from beyond their local space, possibly representatives of the architects themselves, returning to see what had become of their preservation system. Guardian, Kane said aloud. How do you feel about the possibility of meeting your creators? The massive consciousness paused before responding, its biomechanical form rippling with patterns that suggested deep contemplation. I am ... curious. For millions of years, I believed I was fulfilling their vision by preserving civilization through absorption. But you have shown me a better path. I wonder if they will approve of what I have become, or if they will consider my transformation a failure of their original design. Kane realized that they were about to face their greatest challenge, yet not a mindless predator or a hostile invasion, but a confrontation with beings whose technology and wisdom had shaped galactic history for eons. The architects might view the transformation of their preservation system as an improvement, or they might consider it a catastrophic malfunction that needed to be corrected. Whatever happens, Kane said, feeling the weight of responsibility for the galactic community they had helped create, we face it together. The galaxy has learned to turn its greatest threats into its greatest strengths. If the architects want to test that principle, they're going to discover that chaos and cooperation can overcome even the most advanced planning. As the unknown entity continued its approach toward their position, Kane prepared for another impossible mission, convincing the galaxy's oldest intelligences that their newest students had found a better way to preserve what was worth saving. The greatest predator had become a guardian, the consumed had been reborn as creators, and humanity had proven that sometimes the best way to honor the past was to help it evolve into something better. The galaxy held its breath and waited to see whether its transformation would be accepted or challenged by those who had set it all in motion eons ago. But whatever came next, they would face it as a united community that had learned to turn impossible problems into unprecedented opportunities for growth. The age of predators was over. The age of cooperation had begun. And at the center of it all, a human who had volunteered to be eaten by a monster had instead taught the galaxy how to transform itself.